Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin with a simple but powerful question. What if the words you speak every day could erase your debts, open doors to unexpected money, and completely shift your financial reality? Sounds impossible, doesn't it? But let me tell you, Florence Scovel Shinn, a pioneer of prosperity thinking, proved again and again that our words are not just sounds. They are commands. They are forces. They are blueprints for what shows up in our lives. Now, let me ask you, how many times have you said something like, "I'll never get out of debt. I'm broke. Money just slips through my fingers." We say it casually. We say it like a joke. But the subconscious doesn't laugh. It records. It obeys. It's like typing instructions into a computer. The system doesn't ask if you meant it, it just runs the program. So if you're speaking lack, what shows up? More lack. If you're speaking debt, what grows? More debt. But here's the good news. Just like you can delete a wrong file and type a new command, you can speak a new word over your finances. Florence Scovel Shinn taught this simple but life-shifting affirmation. I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear. All that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways. Say that with me in your mind right now. Let it sink in. Imagine this affirmation like a giant eraser moving across the blackboard of your financial fears. Every time you declare it, you wipe away another layer of I can't and replace it with I am free. Let me give you an example. I once knew someone drowning in debt. Bills stacked like mountains. Phone calls every day from creditors. It felt like quicksand. The harder they struggled, the deeper they sank. But instead of collapsing, they shifted. Every morning, instead of groaning I'm buried in debt, they said with conviction, I am free and clear. Money comes to me in expected and unexpected ways. At first, nothing changed on the outside. The bills were still there. The numbers didn't magically disappear. But their energy shifted. Their attitude shifted. And slowly, opportunities appeared. Unexpected checks. A forgotten refund. A friend repaying an old loan. A new side income. Within a year, they cleared more debt than they thought possible. Did magic pay the bills? Not exactly. But their words unlocked ideas, opportunities, and blessings that were invisible before. Here's the truth. Debt is not just financial. It's emotional. It weighs on your shoulders. It steals your sleep. It makes you feel unworthy. And that's why the first battle is not in your wallet, it's in your words. So I challenge you. From this day forward, stop cursing your money with your mouth. Stop rehearsing your debt. Stop speaking lack like it's your identity. Instead, every time the fear rises, declare, I do not owe. I am free. Money flows to me in perfect ways. Say it until you feel it. Say it until your mind believes it. Say it until doors open where there were only walls. Remember this, words are seeds. Plant lack, and you harvest scarcity. Plant freedom, and you harvest abundance. So let me leave you with this final question. If your words today are planting the garden of your tomorrow, what will you choose to speak? Here are the key points you will listen in this video. Your words create your financial reality. Speak debt and it grows. Speak freedom and it manifests. Casual negative phrases about money are powerful commands to your subconscious. Florence Scovel Shinn taught affirmations to erase debt energy and open the flow of abundance. I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear. All that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways. Words shift energy, which unlocks opportunities, ideas, and unexpected financial blessings. Stop rehearsing debt. Start speaking
Think
abundance
about this for a
until
moment.
it becomes your lived
Every
reality.
word
That leaves your lips is like planting a seed into the soil of your future. Some seeds grow into flowers of abundance, freedom, and opportunities. Others, without us even realizing it, grow into weeds of lack, debt, and struggle. The strange part is, most of us are planting weeds and then wondering why our garden doesn't look like paradise. It's easy to dismiss words as harmless, just sounds in the air, but they carry energy. They carry intention. And when repeated enough, they carve pathways in the mind, and those pathways direct our lives like invisible highways. I remember sitting with a friend who was drowning in debt. The weight was written across his face like deep lines carved by worry. Every phone call made him jump. Every unopened envelope on the kitchen counter felt like a bomb about to explode. And when he spoke, you could hear the defeat dripping in every sentence. He would say things like, "I'll never get ahead," or "No matter what I do, I can't win with money." These were not just complaints, they were declarations, powerful affirmations in disguise. He was rehearsing his lack. He was programming his mind to see only barriers. His words created a lens that filtered out every opportunity, every possibility, until all he could see was debt. Florence Scovel Shinn often said that your word is your wand. Imagine that for a second. If your word truly is a wand, then every time you open your mouth, you're casting a spell over your life. What kind of spells are you casting? Some of us have been casting curses without realizing it. We say things like, "Money doesn't stay with me," or "I'm terrible with finances," or "This debt is crushing me." The universe doesn't pause to ask, "Did you really mean that?" It simply responds. Like a faithful servant, it takes your words and sets them into motion. Think of it this way. Imagine you're standing in front of a voice-activated machine that produces whatever you tell it. If you say, "I'm broke," the machine doesn't laugh at your joke, it delivers more lack. If you say, "I can never get out of debt," it locks the doors to every avenue of financial freedom. But if you speak with authority, if you declare, "I am free and clear. Money flows to me in perfect ways," suddenly the machine shifts. Doors open. New paths appear. Ideas you couldn't see before become visible. The change begins inside, and what happens inside eventually shapes what happens outside. I knew another woman who understood this truth. She was a single mother, raising 2 kids, working 2 jobs, and yet she carried herself with a quiet confidence. She never once said, "I can't afford this," even though her situation was tough. Instead, she would say, "The money I need always finds me at the right time." She said it so often that it became a part of her. And I'll never forget the day she told me how an unexpected scholarship appeared for her child's school, how a neighbor offered her freelance work that paid double what she expected, how every time she needed something, it somehow showed up. To her, it wasn't coincidence. It was the fruit of the words she planted. Now, you might be thinking, but how can words change numbers in a bank account? That's the logical question. And yet, here's the truth. Words don't directly erase debt, but they shift your mindset, and your mindset shifts your actions, your energy, and your outcomes. When you say, "I'm broke," your body slumps, your creativity shuts down, your energy lowers. You miss opportunities because your eyes aren't open to them. But when you say, "Money flows to me in perfect ways," your shoulders lift, your mind sharpens, you carry yourself differently, and suddenly you notice solutions that were invisible before. It's like tuning a radio. When you change the frequency of your words, you pick up a whole new signal. Picture 2 people standing in the same storm. One says, "I'll never survive this," and they freeze in fear, paralyzed, unable to move. The other says, "This storm will pass, and I will come out stronger," and they find shelter, they take action, they keep hope alive. Same storm, different words, completely different outcomes. Debt is like that storm. It can overwhelm you if your words magnify its power. But it loses its grip when your words remind you of your freedom. There's a story Florence Scovel Shinn told about a woman who was buried in debt. Instead of focusing on the numbers, she began to affirm every day, "God is my supply. I do not owe. I am free and clear." People laughed at her. They said, "You can't just speak debt away." But as she continued, unexpected money came, opportunities unfolded, and piece by piece her debts disappeared. Her words didn't pay the bills directly, but they created the inner state that allowed the outer world to shift in her favor. It's almost like this. Imagine debt as a heavy chain wrapped around your body. Every time you say, "I'm stuck," that chain tightens. Every time you say, "I'll never escape," another lock clicks shut. But the moment you begin to declare freedom, the locks begin to loosen. One by one, the links fall away, until you can finally step forward. Words are the key that unlocks the chain. And here's something we often forget. Children grow up listening to how we speak about money. If they hear us say, "We can't afford that," or "Money is always a struggle," they inherit those beliefs like hammer-down clothes. But if they hear us affirm abundance, if they hear us say, money flows to us, they grow up planting different seeds. So the words you speak don't just shape your own future, they shape the future of those who look up to you. So let me ask you, what are the words you've been planting? Are you rehearsing debt like it's your identity? Are you speaking lack like it's your story? Or will you choose today to shift your vocabulary and declare freedom? Florence Scovel Shinn said, "Your word is your wand. And if your words are wands, then you've been holding the power all along." The question is, what kind of spell will you cast next? Most people underestimate the power of what slips out of their mouths in everyday conversation. We think casual words don't matter, but they do. Every complaint, every sigh of frustration, every offhand joke about being broke is more than just noise, it's a declaration. It's a command. It's like signing your name on an invisible contract with the universe. And too often, we are signing contracts we don't want to live under. I once sat with a group of co-workers during lunch, and the conversation naturally drifted toward money. One by one, they began to share stories of bills piling up, credit cards maxed out, how expensive everything had become. And with each word, the energy in the room grew heavier. One person laughed bitterly and said, "I'll be in debt until the day I die." Another added, "If I get a raise, it just disappears in new bills anyway." They chuckled together, but you could feel that beneath the laughter was a painful truth. They believed these words. They weren't just joking. They were rehearsing the narrative of lack, reinforcing it every single day, turning it into their personal reality. Florence Scovel Shinn said, "Your word is your wand. But if your word is your wand, then every time you curse your money with negativity, you're casting a spell against yourself. Imagine telling a child over and over, 'You'll never be good enough.' Eventually, that child believes it. Now realize your subconscious mind is that child. Every time you say, 'I'm broke,' or 'I'll never catch up,' your subconscious records it like gospel truth and sets about proving it. The subconscious doesn't question. It doesn't argue. It simply accepts. Picture someone standing in front of a locked treasure chest. The key is in their pocket, but every day they say, "This chest will never open for me." And so, they never even reach for the key. That's what happens when we curse our finances with careless words. We carry the solution within us, but our words blind us to it. I knew a man who worked tirelessly at his job. Long hours, constant overtime, yet he never seemed to move forward. He always spoke in frustration, "I'm working hard but I'm just spinning my wheels. Nothing ever changes." That phrase became his mantra. And guess what? Nothing ever changed. It wasn't until he shifted his words, beginning to say, "Every effort I give is multiplied back to me," that he began to notice promotions, unexpected bonuses, and new streams of income. Did his circumstances change overnight? No. But his language shifted his energy, and his energy opened doors. Think about how often we declare things like, "I can't afford that." Harmless, right? Just the truth. But let me ask you, what if instead of shutting the door with that phrase, you opened it with something else? What if instead of saying, "I can't afford it," you said, "I choose not to spend on that right now, but the money I need is always on its way"? One phrase locks possibilities out. The other keeps the door wide open for provision. We live in a world that constantly reinforces lack. Commercials tell us we don't have enough. News headlines scream about scarcity. Friends and family echo it in conversations. And if we're not careful, we absorb those words until they become our own. The problem isn't just that debt exists. The problem is that we keep feeding it with our speech. Let me tell you about a woman who was buried under credit card bills. Every time she opened her mailbox, her heart sank. She'd mutter, "I'll never get out from under this." Her children began to repeat her words without realizing it. When she told them no at the store, they would say, "We can't afford anything." It hit her one day that she was passing down the very chains that bound her. She decided to change one thing: her language. She began to replace "I'll never get out of debt" with "I am free and clear. I am a magnet for divine provision." Slowly, her children began to mimic her new words. And something remarkable happened. Her perspective shifted. She began budgeting with clarity instead of fear. She started looking for creative ways to increase her income. Within 2 years, she had eliminated over half her debt. She said to me later, "The moment I stopped cursing myself with my words was the moment I finally started to climb out." Here's the truth: our words are like the steering wheel of a car. You may have the most powerful engine, but if you keep steering into walls with your speech, you'll never move forward. Florence Scovel Shinn called careless negative words boomerangs. What you send out comes right back to you. You say, "I'm always struggling with money," and struggle faithfully shows up at your door. You say, "Debt is crushing me," and that pressure doubles down. But the opposite is also true. Declare freedom, and little by little, freedom appears. Speak abundance, and abundance begins to show up. Not because words are magic tricks, but because they align your energy, they shape your perspective, and they activate your faith. I want you to think of your words like tiny architects. Each one lays a brick. Every "I can't" lays a brick of limitation. Every "I'm broke" lays a brick of scarcity. Before long, you're living in a prison built by your own sentences. But imagine if, instead, every day you laid a brick of possibility. I am free. Brick. Money flows to me. Brick. I owe no one, and all that is mine comes easily. Brick. Soon, instead of a prison, you're building a pathway out. So ask yourself, what kind of structure have your words been building? Are you reinforcing the walls of your debt, or are you constructing a bridge to your freedom? Florence Scovel Shinn believed that our mouths are the gatekeepers of our destiny. And when we finally stop rehearsing lack and start rehearsing abundance, life begins to echo back what we declare. Florence Scovel Shinn believed that affirmations were not just nice words, but spiritual tools, shields against fear and swords that cut through the lies of lack. When debt feels like a mountain pressing on your chest, the natural reaction is to speak what you see. "I'm overwhelmed, I can't do this, I'll never catch up." But what she taught is radical. She said, instead of describing your circumstances, you must declare your truth. Not the truth of your bank statement, but the truth of your divine right. Think about the affirmation she gave: "I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear. All that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways." At first glance, it almost sounds like denial. You might be looking at overdue bills, collection notices, and a dwindling bank balance. You might be receiving daily calls from creditors. And yet here she was, teaching people to say, "I do not owe anyone." Isn't that dishonest? Isn't that ignoring reality? But here's the power: she wasn't asking you to deny facts. She was asking you to declare a higher truth. Facts are temporary. Truth is eternal. And the truth is that your spirit is not in debt, your divine inheritance is not lacking, and your words have the power to invite provision in ways your mind cannot yet imagine. I remember meeting a woman at a workshop who looked defeated. She raised her hand and said, "I've tried affirmations before, but I feel like I'm lying to myself. When I say I am free and clear, I look at my bills and think, that's not true." And the facilitator smiled and said, "That's exactly why you must keep saying it. You're not lying to yourself, you're retraining yourself. You've been affirming debt for years. "I can't pay this, I owe so much, I'm drowning." You didn't question those words, you believed them. Now you're simply replacing those toxic affirmations with life-giving ones. The more you say it, the more your mind accepts it. The more your mind accepts it, the more your life shifts to match it. It reminded me of learning a new language. At first the words feel strange, clumsy, even fake on your tongue. But the more you practice, the more natural they become. Eventually, you don't have to translate, you just speak. Affirmations are the same. At first, declaring freedom when you feel bound feels unnatural. But repetition turns the strange into the familiar, the unfamiliar into the natural, and the natural into your new reality. One man I knew was drowning in student loans. Every time the thought crossed his mind, he'd feel a rush of panic. He used to say, "I'll be paying this off forever." But after reading Florence Scovel Shinn, he decided to try her affirmation. He told me the first time he said it aloud, he laughed. It felt ridiculous. "I do not owe anyone. Please, I owe everybody." But he kept at it. Day after day, every time fear rose, he whispered it, "I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear. All that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways." At first nothing happened, but then something subtle shifted. He said the panic lessened. The shame began to dissolve. He stopped hiding his bills in a drawer and started opening them without dread. He began looking for solutions instead of drowning in fear. Within months, he was offered a side contract that doubled his income for a season, and he began making extra payments. He told me, the debt didn't vanish in one day. But the fear did. And when the fear disappeared, the solutions appeared. This is what affirmations do. They don't erase the numbers overnight. They erase the stranglehold those numbers have over your spirit. And once you're free inside, you'll see paths outside that you never noticed before. Florence Scovel Shinn used to say, do not put a limit on the money that is coming to you. Declare that it comes in perfect ways. Perfect ways. That phrase matters. Because sometimes when we're desperate, we only imagine one solution, a lottery win, a miracle check, a rich uncle. But when you say perfect ways, you allow the universe to surprise you. Perfect ways might mean a debt forgiveness program. Perfect ways might mean a refund you forgot about. Perfect ways might mean a new job opportunity, or even the discipline to budget wisely. You don't have to dictate how. You just declare the truth and leave the how to the higher order. Imagine walking into a dark room. Your natural impulse is to describe the darkness. It's so dark in here, I can't see anything, it's impossible to move. But what if instead of rehearsing the darkness, you declared the light? You reach for the switch and say, let there be light. The moment you do, the darkness vanishes not because you ignored it, but because light always drives it out. Affirmations are that switch. Debt may feel like darkness, but your words of freedom flip the light. I think of a story I once heard about a woman whose rent was overdue. She had no money, no idea what to do. She sat in her small apartment and whispered over and over, I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear. All that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways. She said it with tears in her eyes, not because she saw the answer, but because she refused to surrender to fear. The very next day, she received a letter in the mail. A clerical error had been corrected on an old account, and she was owed back pay. The amount was almost exactly what she needed for rent. Coincidence? Maybe. But she believed her affirmation opened the door. You see, debt is not just financial, it's psychological. It's the heaviness on your chest at 2 a.m. It's the sinking feeling when the phone rings. It's the shame when someone asks, how are your finances? That's the real prison. The affirmation is the key. Saying, I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear is like reminding yourself, I am not my debt. I am not this number. I am more. And from that place of freedom, the path out becomes visible. So if you feel crushed under bills today, don't wait for the numbers to change before you change your words. Speak the truth now. Say it trembling, say it doubting, say it through tears if you must, I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear. All that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways. Say it until your soul believes it. Say it until the fear loses its grip. Say it until the doors begin to open. Because words are seeds, and every time you plant this one, you're sowing freedom. And one day, sooner than you think, you'll look back and realize the harvest has arrived. There is something extraordinary about the way words, repeated with faith, begin to shift the unseen currents of life. Florence Scovel Shinn's affirmation, I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear. All that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways is not just a sentence. It is a key. And when you speak it, it feels like sliding that key into a locked door, turning it slowly, and hearing the faint click of freedom on the other side. At first, you may not see the door open. The bills are still there. The numbers still glare at you. But something begins to stir beneath the surface, as if unseen hands are rearranging the pieces of your life to align with what you have spoken. I once met a man who swore by this affirmation. He was a small business owner who had taken out loans to keep his dream alive. When the market shifted, his income dried up, and the debt mounted like a wave crashing over him. His wife begged him to declare bankruptcy. His friends said he should walk away. But instead of surrendering, he began each day with Florence's words. He stood in his empty shop, surrounded by unpaid invoices and dusty shelves, and declared, "I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear. All that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways." He said it with shaky hands at first, his voice almost breaking under the weight of fear. But as days turned into weeks, the words became his anchor. Then small things started happening. A supplier offered him an unexpected discount. A customer who had disappeared for years walked back in and placed a large order. A new partnership opportunity came seemingly out of nowhere. He told me later, "The affirmation didn't erase my debt overnight, but it erased the terror that kept me paralyzed." Once the fear left, the flow returned. Within 2 years, he had paid off nearly every loan. He said he never stopped repeating that one affirmation, and he credited it as the reason doors opened where before there had been only walls. The phrase "all that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways" carries profound power. Because it shifts the weight from your limited self to an unlimited source. It says, "I don't have to figure it all out. I don't have to beg or chase or fight. What is meant for me cannot be withheld from me. It will arrive, not late, not incomplete, but in perfect timing and perfect form." And that kind of surrender is where miracles happen. Think about the river. A river does not strain to flow. It does not force its way forward. It simply moves in perfect rhythm, carving a path, finding its way around rocks and obstacles, always moving toward its destination. Debt feels like a dam blocking that flow. But the affirmation is like opening a gate in the dam, letting the waters of provision rush through again. You don't have to know which stone will move first. You just trust the flow. I recall a single father who was struggling to provide for his 2 children. He told me there were nights he sat at the kitchen table staring at unpaid bills, wondering if he had failed as a parent. One day, he came across Florence Scovel Shinn's work. He was desperate enough to try anything. So he began to whisper the words, "I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear. All that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways." He said at first it felt hollow, almost foolish, like throwing empty words into the air. But he kept going. Soon, those words became the last thing he said before sleeping and the first thing he said upon waking. 3 months later, he received a call he never expected. An old friend had recommended him for a job, one he hadn't even applied for, that paid significantly more than his current work and offered flexibility for his children. With that job, he began to catch up on his debts. But more importantly, he caught up on his peace. He said, "It wasn't just about the money. It was the way I felt when I spoke those words. They gave me hope, and that hope drew in the answers." This is the hidden power of affirmations. They shift your vibration. They take you out of the frequency of fear and place you into the frequency of abundance. And once you're on that frequency, you attract situations, people, and opportunities that match it. Just as a radio cannot play 2 stations at once, you cannot vibrate in fear and faith at the same time. The affirmation is the dial that tunes you into the station of provision. There's something else beautiful about Florence's words, "in perfect ways." Because often we think we know exactly how our debts should disappear. We think it must come through a raise, or a loan, or a sudden windfall. But what if the perfect way is something you can't even imagine yet? By declaring in perfect ways, you're releasing control, allowing the universe to surprise you. And it often does. One woman shared how she repeated this affirmation daily while she was drowning in medical bills. She expected perhaps a small raise at work, or maybe a side hustle to help her chip away at it. Instead, her hospital called months later to inform her that a charity fund had been applied to her account, erasing more than half of what she owed. She cried on the phone, not just because the debt was reduced, but because the timing was flawless. The relief came just when she thought she couldn't take another step. She said, "Those words were my lifeline. I trusted that something perfect would happen." And it did. You see, the words are not magic spells that bend reality instantly. They are magnets. They pull unseen blessings into view. They align your heart with faith, your mind with creativity, your spirit with hope. And when those 3 align, the world outside shifts to match them. So when you stand in front of your debts, whisper those words. Say them until the trembling stops. Say them until your chest feels lighter. Say them until the vision of lack fades and the vision of freedom grows clearer. I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear. All that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways. Speak it as though the river of abundance is already rushing toward you. Because in truth, it always has been, you're just now opening the gate. Fear and money are often locked together like chains. Debt doesn't just live on paper, it creeps into your body, your breath, your sleep. It whispers in the middle of the night, you'll never escape. You're stuck. You've failed. And yet, Florence Scovel Shinn taught something powerful. The fear is the first debt to be paid. Once you speak words that dissolve the fear, the outer debts begin to fade too. I remember a man who once told me he dreaded opening his mailbox. To him, every envelope was a threat, every phone call a reminder that he was drowning. He said, "It's like a monster chasing me. I can't rest. Even when I'm laughing with my kids, the thought of bills sneaks in." But the real monster wasn't the numbers, it was the fear. And fear has a strange way of multiplying debt. Fear paralyzes you. It keeps you from looking for solutions. It steals the clarity you need to make wise choices. It turns molehills into mountains until you no longer see any way forward. That's why Florence's affirmations matter. They are not simply about the money, they are about silencing fear. When you declare, "I do not owe anyone. I am free and clear. Money comes to me in perfect ways," you're not just speaking about bills. You're reminding your heart that you are bigger than the numbers, that your source is larger than any creditor, that you are free even when fear says otherwise. Imagine being trapped in a dark room. The walls feel close, your breath grows shallow, and panic tells you there's no escape. But then, you remember you have a light switch. You flick it on, and the darkness scatters. The walls were never as close as they seemed. That's what happens when fear is replaced by words of freedom. The situation may not vanish immediately, but the panic does, and suddenly you see space where before you only saw walls. One woman I knew had been swimming in debt for years. She told me her biggest burden wasn't the numbers but the shame. She said, "I feel like I wear it on my forehead. I can't look people in the eye. I feel like everyone knows." She had begun to identify herself with her debt. It wasn't something she carried, it was something she thought she was. And so she spoke from that place. "I'm a mess. I'm a failure. I'll never get out." Those words fed her shame until it consumed her. But she made a choice to shift her language. She began to say every morning, "I am free and clear. I am worthy of abundance. I owe no one." At first, she whispered it like a secret, unsure if she even believed herself. But little by little, she noticed the shame lifting. She carried herself differently. Her posture changed. Her voice grew steadier. She began facing her debts instead of hiding from them. Within a year, she had enrolled in a repayment program, negotiated lower interest rates, and made progress she once thought impossible. But more than that, she smiled again. The debt was shrinking, but the fear was gone. This is what affirmations do. They don't always wipe the numbers off a page instantly, but they wipe the heaviness off your soul. They make you breathe deeper, think clearer, act braver. And when you act without fear, you act with wisdom. You see options you once overlooked. You pick up the phone and negotiate. You search for new income streams instead of collapsing into despair. Fear blinds, faith illuminates. Florence Scovel Shinn often said that the spiritual must come first, the material follows after. And that makes sense. Because the weight of debt is not just about dollars, it's about dignity. It's about believing you'll never get ahead, never taste freedom, never breathe easy again. That belief becomes a prison cell. But when you begin to speak freedom, even while the bills are still there, you start rattling the chains. You begin to loosen the lock. And eventually, the door swings open. Think of the countless stories where people thought they were finished, only to discover unexpected provision. A forgotten refund, a debt forgiven, a check in the mail, a friend who stepped in at the perfect moment. Were those coincidences? Or were they drawn in by the shift in energy, the release of fear, the openness to solutions that had been blocked before? I think of a father who told me he had been repeating the affirmation, "All that is mine by divine right now flows to me in perfect ways." He said he still had bills, but something remarkable changed. The knot in his stomach was gone. He laughed again with his children. He played with them without the constant cloud of anxiety. He said, "The money hasn't caught up yet, but my joy has. And I know the money will follow." That is the essence of Florence's teaching. When the fear disappears, faith takes its place, and faith is the soil where miracles grow. Debt can feel like a giant pressing down on you. But giants are defeated not by brute force, but by belief. David faced Goliath not with armor, but with words of faith and a small stone. When you stand before the giant of debt, your words are your stones. They may seem small compared to the size of the problem, but when spoken with conviction, they strike exactly where they need to. So the question is, what are you saying to your giant? Are you feeding its size with words of fear? Or are you speaking the truth of your freedom, even when the giant still towers before you? Florence Scovel Shinn reminds us that the first shift must happen in your mouth, then in your mind, and then in your life. So tonight, when the fear rises and the bills whisper their threats, take a breath and declare, "I do not owe. I am free. Money comes to me in perfect ways." Say it until your shoulders relax. Say it until your breath steadies. Say it until the monster in your mind shrinks back into nothing. Because once the fear is one of the most underestimated forces in dissolving debt. At first, it sounds strange, doesn't it? How can saying thank you make the bills disappear? Yet Florence Scovel Shinn knew that the energy of gratitude magnetizes abundance. Gratitude changes the way you see the world, and when your vision shifts, opportunities appear that were invisible before. I once met a woman who told me she couldn't find a single thing to be grateful for. Her life felt like one long string of disappointments. The debts piled high, her car broke down, her relationships were strained. She said, "Why should I be thankful? Everything is falling apart." But then, slowly, she began a small practice. Every morning she wrote down 3 things, no matter how small. At first, it was almost sarcastic. "I'm thankful I still have coffee. I'm thankful my shoes haven't fallen apart yet. I'm thankful I woke up." But day by day, her list grew. She began noticing things she had overlooked, the kindness of a friend, the beauty of a sunset, even the laughter of a stranger in line at the store. Her circumstances didn't change overnight. The bills didn't vanish instantly, but something within her did. She said, "For the first time in years, I feel alive. I feel lighter. And somehow, the debt feels less threatening." That's the power of gratitude. It doesn't erase reality, it transforms your relationship to it. When you stop focusing on what's missing, you begin to see what's already given. And what you focus on expands. Florence often said that words are your wand, and gratitude is one of the strongest incantations you can speak. When you say thank you, you align with the flow of life instead of resisting it. You stop fighting against what is and start receiving what can be. Think about it. Who do you enjoy giving to more, the person who complains about everything you give them, or the one who lights up and says, "Thank you, this means so much"? The universe works the same way. Gratitude opens the door for more to flow in. A man once shared his story with me. He had been overwhelmed with debt for years, and his nightly ritual was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, listing everything that was wrong. His mind replayed the creditor's calls, the overdue notices, the endless weight of not having enough. But then, after hearing about Florence's teachings, he flipped the ritual. Instead of listing problems, he listed blessings. He whispered them until he fell asleep. "Thank you for my health. Thank you for the roof over my head. Thank you for my family. Thank you for the chance to start again." At first it felt forced, but soon he noticed he was sleeping better. His mood improved. His co-workers even remarked, "You look different, like something has lifted off you." That lighter energy made him more creative at work, and eventually he was offered a promotion. Gratitude didn't just change his attitude, it opened doors that worry had kept closed. Picture a radio dial. When you're tuned to the station of fear, all you hear is static, noise, chaos, panic. Gratitude is the hand that turns the dial. Suddenly, the music comes through. The signal is clear. Opportunities you couldn't hear before start playing in your life. That's why debt begins to shrink when gratitude grows. Gratitude tunes you into solutions instead of problems. I remember reading Florence's line, "Gratitude is the law of increase, and complaint is the law of decrease." Think about that. Every time you complain, you're shrinking your blessings. Every time you give thanks, you're multiplying them. So even in debt, the question is, are you feeding the decrease, or are you inviting the increase? There was a young couple who told me they used to fight constantly about money. Every argument ended the same way: we'll never get ahead. We'll always be stuck. Their language was poisoned with complaint. But they decided to try something new. Each night at dinner, instead of talking about what they lacked, they each named one thing they were thankful for. At first it was awkward. Sometimes the only thing they could think of was, "I'm thankful we have each other." But slowly, their focus shifted. They stopped fighting as much. They laughed more. They noticed blessings they had missed before. And here's the beautiful part: within a year, they received an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative. It wasn't millions, but it was enough to clear half their debts. They looked back and realized, we didn't get the inheritance because of gratitude, but gratitude prepared our hearts to receive it without fear, without guilt, and with joy. Gratitude is not a trick to manipulate the universe. It is a truth that changes you. It melts bitterness. It softens resentment. It lifts shame. And when those weights fall away, abundance can finally find its way in. Florence advised people to affirm, "Infinite Spirit, I give thanks for this wealth which is mine by divine right." Notice that "I give thanks now." Not later, when the bills are paid. Not someday, when the debt is gone. But now. Gratitude in advance is faith in action. It's saying, I trust that the supply is already on its way, and I'm thankful before I even see it. That's the highest form of trust. So tonight, when you're tempted to count your debts, try counting your blessings instead. Let gratitude be the song you hum while washing dishes, the whisper you breathe before sleep, the first words you speak when you wake. Because the more you give thanks, the more life will give you reasons to.